Alright guys, so today's notes are going to be over filling out the rest of the unit circle. So how this is related to the last class is that we filled out the first quadrant, so now we're going to fill out the last four quadrants of the unit circle using those special angles that we talked about yesterday, both 45 degrees, which ends up being pi over 4. So let's just take a look at the 45 degree angle first. So our 45 degree angles are also all the radians in the form n times pi over 4. So the key degrees here are 45 degrees. Okay, and then if you would go to the next 45 degree mark, that would be 135 degrees. And then you would go to the next 45 degree mark, which would be down here. Okay, that is going to be 225 degrees. And then the last 45 degree mark is right over here. And then that one is going to be 315 degrees. For radians, we're talking about pi over 4. Then we're going to talk about 3 pi over 4. And then we're going to talk about 5 pi over 4. And then the last one is 7 pi over 4. The easiest way to count all of these is either to count by 45 degrees or count by pi over 4. So what does that mean? Okay, so if we started here on the far right side, which is our 0 degree mark, and then we just counted by 45 degrees, this would be 45 degrees. Add 45 more degrees, this would be 90 degrees. Add 45 more degrees, this next one would be 135 degrees. Add 45 more degrees, and then we have 180 degrees. Add 45 more degrees, we have 225 degrees. Whoops, too many twos there. Add 45 more is 270 degrees. Add 45 more is 315 degrees. Add 45 more, and that's 360 degrees. So the easiest way to count our pi over 4s is our 45 degrees is by counting by 45. The easiest way to do pi over 4 is to count by pi over 4, right? So we have 0 here, and then we have pi over 4 would be the next one. And then pi over 4 plus pi over 4 gives us 2 pi over 4, which is also equal to pi over 2. Add pi over 4 more, that's going to give us 3 pi over 4. Add pi over 4 more, that's going to give us 4 pi over 4, which is the same thing as just pi. Add pi over 4 more, that's 5 pi over 4. And then add pi over 4 more, that gives us 6 pi over 4, which is equivalent to 3 pi over 2. Add pi over 4 more gives us 7 pi over 4. And then the last one gives us 8 pi over 4, which is the equivalent to 2 pi. So that is the easiest way to count around here and get our different pi over 4 measurements. Okay? So that's definitely the starting point for knowing all of the angles in the unit circle, is knowing what to count by. Okay, so then I'm going to come through here and actually erase all of those that I just wrote down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fill out all of these points. I should have put those angles in the center more. So let's talk about this first one. We filled this one out the other day, right? So this is our 45 degrees, or our pi over 4. And then if we build the right triangle right here, that would give us 1 is always the radius. So then to go to either side, we just divide by radical 2. When you divide by radical 2, you get 1 over radical 2, which is equal to radical 2 over radical 2 over 2. Same thing, you just divide by radical 2 to get the other side, and you get radical 2 over 2 here. So then this point at 45 degrees, or pi over 4, is going to be radical 2 over 2, comma, radical 2 over 2. All right, let's take a look at the next one, right? So the next pi over 4 angle this is 135 degrees. When we build this right triangle, we always build to the closest x-axis. So we have a line right here. We have a line coming to the center, it's our radius, and then we have a line coming out to the side. That's our 135 degree angle. Okay, but we're still building the 45 degrees from inside of here. So again, 1 is here, divide by radical 2, that gives us radical 2 over 2. Same thing down here, we divide by radical 2, that would give us radical 2 over 2. But one thing that we have to be super careful of is if we start here in the middle and we go left, what does that tell us about the x value? It tells us that in this quadrant the x value is negative. So our point at this point is going to be negative radical 2 over 2, comma, radical 2 over 2. So the one thing that has changed from the first point to the second point is we put a negative on the x. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. So the next one then is our, actually this is 135 degrees or 3 pi over 4. So I'm going to put that as well, 3 pi over 4 radians. Okay, moving to the next one. So the next one that we have is our 225 degrees. So we're going to come all the way around to 225 degrees right here, and we're going to build this triangle. Remember, we're always going to the closest x-axis, so we're going straight down here. So this is 225 degrees, or also known as 5 pi over 4. And then we build this, okay? So we actually already have our x value, it's negative radical 2 over 2, and then this time the y value is going straight down, so it's going to be negative radical 2 over 2. So then this point is negative radical 2 over 2, comma, negative radical 2 over 2. So then the one thing that changes from the second quadrant to the third quadrant is that both of those are negative. All right, 1 to go. So the last one that we're going to look at is our 315 degrees. Okay, which is also our 7 pi over 4. So we wrap all the way around the circle here. Boom. So this is 315 degrees slash 7 pi over 4. And then we build the right triangle. And then we can get these points. This is negative radical 2 over 2 because it's straight down. We already have radical 2 over 2, so then the point right here is radical 2 over 2, comma, negative radical 2 over 2. Okay? And so this would be all of the pi over 4 locations. Notice that everything for pi over 4 stays the same. The only thing that changes is the sign in front of radical 2 over 2, which is very, very nice. Okay, so if that gives you enough of an idea, guys, to go through the rest of this and try to figure out what is going on, by all means, I feel like you don't need to watch the next 2 videos. But if you need some help, I would definitely continue watching the next 2 videos. Oh yeah, just real quick, let's do these questions right here at the bottom. So it says, find the ratios of the following using your right triangle from quadrant 1. So sine of 45 degrees. Sine, if we go sine is opposite. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So the opposite side from this central angle, right, our central angle is here. So the sine opposite is going to be radical 2 over 2 divided by 1, which would just give us radical 2 over 2. Cosine of 45 degrees is going to be adjacent, which is radical 2 over 2 divided by the hypotenuse, which is 1. So then we get radical 2 over 2 divided by 1, which is then equal to radical 2 over 2 again. And then the last one is tangent. Tangent is opposite, so radical 2 over 2 divided by adjacent, which is radical 2 over 2. What happens when we do that? You get radical 2 over 2 divided by radical 2 over 2. So top is the same as the bottom, so we're just left with 1. Which the nice part about tangent, guys, is the tangent of all of our 45 degree angles is always going to be 1, which is so nice for future reference. So those are the 45-degree angles. And as I said, if that gives you enough of an idea to do the rest of this without watching the continuing videos, feel free to do that. If not, keep coming with me into the next one. So the next one that we're going to look at is 30 degrees.